What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mental Step Up. Today's episode, we're going to talk about why communication is key. Now, tell me if you've heard this one before. Communication is the most important thing in a relationship. The crazy thing is, it's true. Communication is super important. What is communication? Well, communication is you expressing how you feel, you telling someone what you're experiencing, and telling them how you feel, what you want, things like that. So you can understand in a relationship, it's probably hard when you can't express yourself, when you can't communicate with your partner. Now, communication is your key to success when it comes to the relationship, workplace, and in life. So obviously, it's important to be able to communicate, but some of us have trouble with this. You would think we have a good grasp on it because we all talk, right? We're all talking to each other. I'm doing a podcast where I'm talking to you guys. However, some of us struggle with this in a relationship. And I can understand where the frustrations and the problems happen. No relationship is perfect. We all have the ups and downs in a relationship. The problem is, or the thing is, communication can make or break your relationship because if you have good communication skills, you can get over the conflicts, you can get through the conflicts actually. You guys can come up with resolutions and solutions. But when there's not a good communication skills, it's basically like talking two languages. Two people can be in a relationship but look at that relationship in two different ways. And that I honestly understand that's frustrating. So there are things we can do to make communication better. The first thing I'm going to say is you need to set a time, you need to set aside time for that communication, for that that talk that you need to have with that person. When you're talking to someone, when there's a conflict, there are some people who need to walk away from the situation. They need to process their thoughts and they need to understand what just happened. So it's important to set aside time to have that conversation when both parties need have their thoughts in order. Now I understand some people need want to just talk about it right then and there. I'm one of those people, but I have learned that other people need to just walk away and process what they're doing. I'm someone who wants to be like, "Hey, let's talk about it right now. Let's figure it out because I don't want it to just like marinate and just we both sleep angry and things like that." But it's really important for the other person to process if they need that. It's really hard to have a conversation with someone who's not ready to have that conversation. It never goes well. I've never met a couple and I've never had a conversation where if one person is ready and the other person's not, it doesn't go well. I've never seen that unless you're one of the few. I've never seen that and I've never experienced that myself. So it's important that both parties are ready to have that conversation, whatever the topic is. But it's also important to set aside time for that, where there's no distractions, no interruptions. It's all about you guys having that conversation and getting through the conflict. Now, when you set aside that time, the next thing I want to talk about is thinking about what you're going to say. You ever hear that expression, think before you say? Well, that's kind of true, right? You don't want to go into a conversation with your thoughts all jumbled up and you don't want to say the wrong thing when you don't even mean it. So, it's important to have your thoughts in order, have those bullet points and talk about the most important things and leave out the less important things. Whatever you're feeling is super important, but there are topics that you need to get across and you need to talk about and you want to use the time that you have to get to those points. If you're going to just ramble on about other things, the big and the small, it's going to get confusing. Your significant other, your partner are just not going to want to continue the conversation because it's all up and down. So think about what you're going to say before you say it so you know what the most important things are and you get that across. Now, caveat to that is make the message clear. Here's the thing. When you have your thoughts jumbled up, you're going to ramble on about stuff, and your partner's not going to understand like what's the point of the conversation. They're going to think that you're thinking about one thing and then another thing and another thing, but there's nothing concrete. They don't know what's going on. So make the message clear. Use statements like I feel, I want, I need, because that sets the tone. You are definitely expressing yourself and you making it crystal clear that I feel you did this and it did not make me feel good. I felt some type of way about what you did. Things like that make it super clear on what you're feeling, and and the message is understandable. The next thing is listening, not just speaking. We I I feel like we all have a problem with this because we all get defensive. We all don't want to be wrong, right? You don't want to have to you don't want to be the person in the wrong. So you're defensive. So you're not listening. You're hearing what they're saying, but you're ready to defend yourself. You're ready to give X, Y, and Z excuses or replies because you want to say, "Hey, it's not just my fault." Things like that. But you're not listening. The other person is trying to tell you how they felt. But it's important for you, and it's important for you to understand how they felt so you can get where they're coming from, because you want the same thing. You want to be able to express how you feel, and you want them to listen to understand where you're coming from. So many times in a relationship, someone is saying, like, I feel blah, blah, blah. But the other person is like, oh, but I do this, I do that. They're not listening to where that other person is coming from. So we're all talking and it's going in one ear and out the other. But you want it to go in one ear, process here, and then understand what's going on. So listening, not just replying, is super important. Now, those are the verbal communication skills. Let's talk about nonverbal. It's not about what you say or how you say it, it's what you're doing when someone is saying something. Nonverbal skills is just as important as what you're saying, because that tells your nonverbal skills, your gestures, your eye contact shows someone if they're interested or not interested of what you have to say. Giving good eye contact when you're having a communication, when you're having a conversation is super important. That tells you the other person that they're engaged at what you're saying and they're engaged into the conversation. If someone's looking the other way while you're speaking, you're not going to want to continue that conversation. You're going to be like, oh, whatever, never mind. How many times have you had a conversation and someone looks the other way and says, oh, but like it doesn't matter? Like that, that happens all the time. So giving good eye contact while your partner is telling you something is super important. Your gestures, your body language also gives off that can help you with nonverbal skills. If someone's leaning towards you, if they're actively listening, their eyes are open, things like that, that makes you know that tells you they're in the conversation. But when someone is laid back, sitting I don't know, sitting sideways and just putting their hand on their cheek and things like that, that's going to show that, hey, they're not interested. I don't want to have this conversation. Nonverbal skills super important, and I believe that once we get that down, it helps out a lot as well. So verbal and nonverbal are go intertwined, and those are big parts in that. What I want everyone to understand from this episode is communication is key. And when you have your communication skills down with your partner, you get to build companionship. You guys are learning to share experiences, interests, and concerns with your partner. And that means a lot to the other person. You get closer. You're starting to build better intimacy, because intimacy is not just sexual, it's emotional as well. Once you get closer to someone, you build a more intimate relationship. And also, you get comfortable with that person. There's there's a great feeling when it comes to being able to express how you feel to the person that you're with, that you love. And you get to find out things when the communication skill is good. You get to find out key things, key points in your relationship that you can build on with each other. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode. I'll see you guys on the next one.